So I appreciate you guys coming out to the first session of the Better Life Project. Woohoo! In all honesty though, I think this is going to be a great session. For those of you that have not heard Amna speak, Amna is a beast when it comes to all things real estate. I did an interview with him not too long ago, a few months ago, I think it was. And he had a goal of, is it 52 houses this year. And I say that, and sometimes people are like, oh, 52 houses. And it's like, takes for most people to buy one house is a feat. So 52 in 1 year is insane. And currently you're at 38 houses in 1 year. So I guarantee you guys are going to learn a lot in this session. So I'm going to get out of here, so I'm not going to take the stage.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Lenny. Appreciate it. So, behind, because it's in month 40 of the year right now, and I'm only 38 in, so if you guys got 2 properties, send them my way. I need to get caught up here. So I've taught a lot about real estate investing. I know a lot of you guys have maybe done real estate investing as well. We're going to start from the beginning, go over some of the basics, and maybe get some interaction. I always like to start with why real estate investing, and we'll get into this topic a little bit more, but why do I do real estate investing? It all comes down to family. So this is my investment company, New Leaf Developers, and these are my kids, my oldest, my CEO. Still haven't found a role for this guy yet, but he tagged along there. And really my whole goal is to teach as much about real estate investing as possible to as many people. We used to be very secretive, me and my wife, about it, because we just didn't want to share. We're very private people, but the reality is, over the last couple of years, we realized the benefit of sharing the knowledge, and we really wanted to start helping our kids understand the value of understanding the principles of financial freedom through real estate. So that's kind of our goal there. So every time we go to settlement, we try to bring them, and they're kind of tied into that. So the goal is spread the wealth, spread the knowledge with your family and friends as much as possible, hopefully. All right, so topic for this group here is how to build wealth through real estate. And wealth is a funny word, so let's start with that. What is wealth? What's the definition of wealth? What do we think of when we hear wealth? Money, all right. But how do we define wealth? Like, how do you know your wealth?
Assets?
Assets, okay. Net wealth, assets versus your liabilities maybe. So there's various ways you can look at this, but here's a topic I talk about a lot, maybe way too much. And something happened in 1971. What happened and what changed with money in 1971? Go for it.
We went off the gold standard?
Oh, look at that. You read a few books,
I sure did.
right?
1971,
we went off the gold standard. And what that means for us in the U.S. economy is we became a debt economy, right? And that completely changed. So the gold standard was, right, prior there was $1, and it was like a certificate for actual precious metals held somewhere. And at some point they said, yeah, never mind, forget about that. We're going to become a debt economy, and so we're not actually going to tie our dollars to specific amounts of gold and silver, stashed away anywhere. And so what that allowed the U.S. to do is basically print money on demand. And so it's been able to, they probably had really good reasons to do it. But what that does to our money right now, it creates inflation, right? So we have this thing called inflation, and the U.S. dollar has lost about 90% of its purchasing power or its value since 1971, since that happened. So if you had $100 in the bank in 1971 and you didn't grow it at all, it's worth $5 today. It still was $100, but the value, the purchasing power, dropped drastically. And so as long as we understand inflation and what that means for us, that might affect our decisions on what we do with our money in the bank or what we do just in general financially. So it's important to understand that, because a lot of times wealth is defined by money in the bank or equity in a property, and I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm just saying that doesn't work with an inflation economy. How does inflation go up? What causes inflation to go up?
Printing money?
Printing money. So recently, has there been money printed?
A lot.
Like record levels of money printed, record levels. Not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying there's a lot of money that has been printed, and so when you add new money to the economy, the only thing it can do is devalue money, right? And so our value of our dollar has gone down drastically and will continue to go down drastically. That's just economics, and that's what's gonna happen. So, us understanding that, you know, we have a dollar amount for financial freedom for retirement that we set a year ago. It might not be accurate today. If we had a plan 20 years ago about our retirement 30 years from now, or whatever it is, yeah, I think $5 million should be enough, or whatever it is. How do we know, right? So we have this stagnant nest egg target that most people look at for financial freedom, and the reality is very, very tough to actually use that concept when we are talking about our US dollar because of inflation. So, once again, wealth, I like to define wealth in time. That is my favorite way to define wealth. And so, basically, wealth defined in time, how many months or years you can continue your current lifestyle if your active income stops altogether. So if your active income, whatever you're doing for your active income right now, you stop it today, all right? Then we got to do an accounting. All your assets, any passive income coming in, anything coming in, and anything in the bank, anything that you can sell, how long can you continue your current lifestyle? So if you have a $10,000 a month lifestyle, and you have $100,000 in the bank, how many months is that? 10 months, right? But if you have passive income to offset that, then it might go out a little bit longer. So you factoring in, if you had to stop working, or you wanted to stop working, what is your wealth and how long can you do that? And the moment you hit, all my expenses are covered by my passive income or by my active wealth without me actively working, that's really where you hit your financial freedom. And that's really the goal that a lot of investors have when they look at real estate there as well. So, 3 main categories of real estate investors. There's lots of types of real estate investment projects that you can do. Tons. There's wholesaling, there's flipping, there's rentals, there's short-term rentals, there's student rentals, there's commercial. There's lots of aspects of real estate that you can do, but from the investor standpoint, I like to put them in 3 different categories. The first category is, this is your profession. This is what you do as a job. You make money from real estate investing, and then you spend money from real estate investing. And that's fine. But it's not a setting up for the future. It's, this is what I'm doing to support myself right now. The moment I stop investing, that income stops. So, wholesaling, anybody, you guys heard about wholesaling? Right? So that is, there's wholesalers out there that actually go out and find properties, get them under contract, and they sell them to other investors like myself for a fee. Right? And I love wholesalers because they help me find properties that I don't have to go hunt for. But that's a job. The moment that they stop doing that, they don't make money, they don't have an asset to work with. Flipping, fixing and flipping, right? So fix this house, same thing. You buy a property for $100,000, you put $50,000 into it, you sell it for $200,000, there's a $50,000 delta or profit potentially there. That is fix and flip, but the moment you stop that, there's no profits, there's no income coming in. So that is really a job on the investment side. So nothing wrong about that at all. All it is understanding that. And so people that are in this state should learn how to do that much better. This really feeds your curiosity. I was talking with you earlier, I do fix and flip every once in a while, not because that's my goal for investing, because it's a creative outlet. There's something great about being able to make something look really nice, put it on the market and sell it. You do it a little bit different than if you're actually renting out the property. Next category, financial freedom investor. Everything you do in this category is to increase your passive income. The income that comes in no matter what you do. If I don't go to work today, tomorrow, this week, this month, this year, what sort of income is going to come in? Right? Because right now you're going to work for active income. Passively, what can we bring in? And you're recycling those funds to help you increase your passive income purchases so that you can increase your passive income altogether. And this is usually only for a period of time. This might be for a 5-year focus, this might be for a 10-year focus of investing. And the types of investment properties you buy in this category is different than this category. And then we have our third category, generational wealth or legacy investor. Once you are financially free, once all your passive income exceed your expenses, you are financially free, you can retire. So you don't need to work. What are you going to do? You're going to continue to work and you're going to continue to invest. Now you can build something bigger. Build for generational wealth, build for your charity of choice, whatever it is, invest at a greater level. And so the types of investments you do here is completely different than the types of investments you do here. Completely different. There's different priorities on there. In terms of building wealth, by far, the number one most important category is this number two right here. Until you're financially free and retired and don't need an income ever again for the rest of your life, this is the category for building wealth. And then once you are beyond financial freedom, then you start looking at something like this, and maybe this, depending on what your interests are. Any questions on this? Does that make sense? All right, so focusing in on that track number 2, priority investments for financial freedom track. Number 1, when I'm buying a property and I'm buying a property to stay within this financial freedom track for passive income, the number 1 priority is cash flow within this track. Not appreciation, not equity, not anything else beyond that. It is cash flow coming in. I need to make sure there's enough cash flow coming in from that property for it to make sense. Number 2 is leverage, or the ability to leverage. Bringing in and making sure I can get a loan on this property is extremely important once in this financial freedom track. And then number 3 is tax advantages. And number 4 is capital gains. Most people, when they think about real estate investing, this is the number 1 priority. How much does your home increase in value? The reality is, on this track, that is the least important thing. At some point, if you're on a different track, that is very important. But on this track, this doesn't matter as much. If you buy it right and it never goes up in value ever again, it should still be a good investment to you if you follow these other 3 priorities here. All right, so Bitcoin. Anybody have Bitcoin? No? Of course Lenny's got Bitcoin, right? So investing in real estate versus investing in stocks, bonds, Bitcoin. What's the difference? Is there a difference? How do we compare real estate versus that? Because from a financial planning standpoint, right, there is a broad view of all these financial products, and real estate is one of those. And stocks, bonds, mutual funds, crypto is really what people are talking about for the most part. Are we on a level playing field? And what is the difference when we're talking about real estate versus those? What do you guys think?
Real estate is best.
Well, how do we know? I mean, is it?
It's obviously, it's harder getting out of real estate than stocks or Bitcoin.
So liquidity is really good
Yeah,
for those other options, right? Absolutely.
yeah.
Really, really positive for liquidity. And they go up. They appreciate in value just like other things. Do we get cash flow from those other things?
They have dividends, right?
Right?
Some stocks have dividends.
What about tax advantages?
It's not taxed. It's not taxed.
So when you own a rental property, and there's something called depreciation when you own a rental property versus your own property, you're able to offset your income through that depreciation. So the income on that property and income that you're bringing in elsewhere. Basically, that's how people pay less taxes. They own a lot of real estate because the government says, the IRS says, over a span of 27 and a half years, that property will depreciate down to nothing. So we will give you 27 and a half, basically, we'll divide it by 27 and a half, and every single year you can take that amount of the property's value and depreciate your income by that. Offsetting your taxes drastically. That doesn't happen in stocks because it doesn't appreciate. But let's just talk about appreciation in general. The 2 most important things that people think about when they look at real estate and when they look at stocks, they are equity. So if John invested $100,000 in the stock market, and the very same day Hetty invested $100,000 in real estate, and a year later, we're looking back, and miraculously both the stock market or the Bitcoin market and real estate went up by exactly 10%. Both put in $100,000, both went up by 10%. All right, how much did each investor gain?
10,000.
10,000? We all good with that? So, yeah, so your stock's 10,000, absolutely. However, Hetty did not buy this cash. She put that as a down payment. Let's say 25% down. She bought a $400,000 home. And it went up by 10%, right? Real estate market went up by 10%. So how much did she gain? $400,000 home, went up by 10% is $40,000. So she had a 40% gain. So when people think, all right, they're going up at the same level, all right, real estate went up by 5%, this went up by 8%, it's not the same if you are able to use leverage correctly. It's not even in the same ballpark. Right, so just on equity, which is the least important thing about real estate in our financial freedom track, least important thing, just on equity, it's not even in the same game. All right, so we're going to talk about ROI, and we're going to talk about debt and leverage, because once again, you cannot go to your bank and say, I want to borrow money to go buy some stocks or buy some Bitcoin. They will not allow you to do that, right? They won't. But you can borrow money to buy real estate all day, every day, because they believe it's a natural asset. So they'll allow you to do that. Debt gets a bad connotation in our society because it causes a lot of pain, a lot of problems, and so there's a lot of negative connotations surrounded by it. Good debt versus bad debt, we'll talk about that a little bit today as well. Dave Ramsey, he is almost a complete opposite of Robert Kiyosaki, we mentioned earlier today, in terms of focus. I love his book. If you have a desire to get rid of your consumer debt, there's no better book out there to read than this. Like, he will help you, put you in a program to get rid of credit card debt, get rid of consumer debt. However, to an extreme, he believes all debt is just evil. And the reality is, if you understand it, it could help. I believe for 95% of Americans, he's 100% correct, because most people cannot handle consumer debt. We get a credit card, like, I won't abuse this, and we just overspend, right? The reality is it happens sometimes for most people. So it's a good book to read, but it's not 100% accurate in terms of what we're looking at. So we're going to pull out a rental property just in general. So I teach a bunch of other classes, and we go over some rules of thumbs. We're not going to be able to have time to do that today. But one rule of thumb on the rental side that we focus on, when I look to buy a rental, I want to make sure it meets what's called the 1% rule. Have you guys heard that before? The 1% rule, very simple. If I buy a rental property, I want it to rent for 1% of the purchase price every single month. So simple math, if it bought it for $100,000, I want it to rent for $1,000 a month. If I bought it for $200,000, I want to rent it for $2,000 a month. So we're in Loudoun County. The average sales price is like $700,000, right? So let's just say $700,000. Is the average rent $7,000 a month?
No.
No. What would you guess the average rent is? Probably half of it.
18 to
Yeah, maybe closer to 3,000 would be my guess. So the reality is, Loudoun County is nowhere near that 1% rule. There's no way I'd buy a rental property here. Does it mean it's a bad place to invest? No. It's just a bad place to invest if you're on the financial freedom track and that's your goal. It's just different. Loudoun County is really good for equity and appreciation, but that's not what this track is about yet, right? And so this is meeting that 1% rule. Here's an example. This is actually out of Winchester. So $200,000, we're going to talk about a cash purchase versus a finance purchase. A lot of people say, okay, do I want to do a cash purchase or do I want to actually get a loan? Whether it's a $50,000 purchase or a $200,000 purchase, doesn't matter. So here, $2,000 a month rent meets the 1% rule. And this is on the cash purchase side. Expenses for this particular property is $684 a month. I have a term called OPEX, CAPEX, is operational expenses, capital expenditures. That is, you're paying your property manager around 10%. That is setting aside money for reserves. If something's going to break, that is paying your taxes, your insurance, and things like that. So this particular property was about just under $700 a month. So after that, you're bringing in about $15,000, almost $16,000 a year. Simple math there. Now your cash on cash return, you take that, how much are you making per year, divided by how much you invested in. So in this scenario, you invested $200,000, it's a 7.9% return that you're actually getting back, right, in this scenario. So next line item, tax savings and depreciation. We talked about that earlier. Basically, you take the value of the property, divide it by 27 and a half years if it is residential, and you have a ability to offset your income by that much amount. And in this case, it was roughly $1,800 for that year. All right, so you add those two together. Now you divide that by what you invested in $200,000. You're up to almost 9% per year, which is not bad. If there's appreciation, we don't know if the market's always going to appreciate, but it's been appreciating. So let's just say if there's appreciation. In this example, there was a 5% appreciation 1 year later. So 5% was $10,000 appreciation. So if we wanted to add that, $17,000 plus $10,000, now we're up to $27,000. Divided by $200,000, that's about a 14% return. Does that make sense so far? All right, so I'm going to go to the other side. I'm not factoring in rental increases. I'm not factoring in anything else on that. So let's say you buy that exact same property, but you decide to get a loan as an investor, right? And so as an investor, the most common loan is you're putting down 25%. Like when you're buying your primary residence, you put down 0%, 3%, 5%, 10%, depending on what you qualify for. As an investor, most investors are putting down roughly 25%, somewhere between 20 and 25. All right, so let's say it's $50,000 for this example. So now you have the exact same expenses that we saw over here, right? $684, but now you have principal and interest mortgage of about $716 a month. So your cash flow is clearly going to be less. You have $600 a month, which is about $7,000 a year, so almost half the cash flow. But when we look at the return, you only have to spend $50,000 for that. So you have a $7,000 divided by $50,000. You're at 14% on this top line compared to 8%. Then we go to something that's not on this side. There's no debt over here, so you can't reduce debt. On this side, in year one, you're reducing debt. How do you reduce debt in a property that you own?
Paying the mortgage, right?
Pay the mortgage, right? Every time you pay the mortgage, a little bit is principal, a little bit is interest. And if the tenant's paying your mortgage, they're paying down your debt. So it's not a reinvestment on your part. So in year one, in this example, $2,640 is principal paid off. And that principal paid off is equity gain that increases the value or the equity stake that you have in that property. So you add those two together, 9,800 divided by 50,000, you're at 20% return right there. Now we go to the same tax savings and depreciation, exact same savings and depreciation, $1,800 in year one. Now we're up to 23%. And then if there's appreciation in the market, let's say there's a $10,000 appreciation in the market. So now we're at $21,000 divided by 50,000, you're at a 43% return. So clearly much different in terms of finance or using leverage. I like to look at the term, when will I get all my money back? If I invest in a property, I want to find out when I'm going to get all my money back. So if you follow this track for 2.3 years, you're going to get your entire $50,000 investment back through either cash flow or appreciation. If there's no appreciation whatsoever, it'll take you 4 years, 4.3 years. So the key is finding the investments like this and following these rules. And so we look at 43% ROI compared to 14% ROI. Clearly 43% is better, but we often get people saying, all right, well 21,000 is less than 27,000. I like $27,000 better. And my answer to that is if you only have $200,000 to invest, instead of just buying a cash property, you would do much better to buy 4 of these properties and basically times 4. So you got like $86,000 of value or return on these deals. And these are kind of the basic math of owning real estate and some of the benefits of owning real estate as a rental property. Any questions on this math? There's a lot of math here, I get it. And almost every session I do an example like this just to kind of show the benefits of owning real estate if you buy it correctly. So, building wealth, leading towards retirement or financial freedom. How much do we actually need to retire? This number is different for everybody. Whether it's amount in the bank, really, what are your expenses, right? If you live like a monk and it's $500 a month to live, then that's great, right? You might be retired today because of that. If you have a $30,000 a month lifestyle, it's a little bit different. So everyone's going to be on a range between those, and it's figuring out how do you increase your income, your passive income to be able to cover that. And so the traditional method for retirement, and this is from a retirement planning site, can't remember which one it is, but anyways, this is what's called the 4% withdrawal rate, which is very, very common for retirement planners. And so if you plan to retire at the retirement age, which is old, right? It's 60 something, right? So if you want to work all the way through then and retire at that age and don't live too long because your money's going to run out. So let's say you have a $100,000 a year lifestyle right now, and you want to maintain that $100,000 a year lifestyle. It's saying for you to maintain that, you need $2.5 million in the bank, and at the 4% withdrawal rate, you will be fine if you don't live too long.
How long is too long? Just curious. So what,
So what's the average lifespan in America?
81?
Don't live beyond that.
Oh, okay.
They're planning you for you to live average.
Okay.
Right? It's as simple as that, right?
Okay.
So, $100,000 a year, $2.5 million in the bank, but what does this not factor in?
Inflation?
Inflation. Inflation, like if you were setting this plan 10 years ago, and you're like, yeah, I need $2.5 million because of that, your $100,000 lifestyle 10 years ago might be, I don't know, $150,000 today, just because the cost of burgers have gone up or whatever it is, right? It just has gone up. And so, doesn't increase with inflation, and that's the biggest flaw with this concept here. However, when you're talking about income, especially income connected, passive income connected to rentals, that does adjust with inflation. That's called rent increase. When there's more money in the economy and things just are basically, because of inflation, the value of money has dropped, the rent normally will increase as well. So you'll be able to do that. So understanding investments versus speculation. This is equity versus cash flow. So this is over the last roughly 30 years, a red line. This is our real estate market. We remember the big boom, the peak that we all saw, and then we saw the crash, right? Right away we saw the crash there, and now we're going up here in another boom. I'm not saying we're about to crash, but we're up here, right? And then the same period of time, this is the S&P 500. We see these peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. Now, over a period of time, it averages out, right? And that's usually the advice of if you wait long enough, it will average out and you'll be okay. The problem is if you don't want to wait long, if you were planning to retire here or here, but now you're here and you got to wait 15 years to get back to par, it's not a great scenario to be in. And so same thing with equity. If you were planning to use the equity of your home or sell this or whatever it is, and you did it 1 year too late, and now you are underwater, that leads to you not being able to do what you plan to do. And so we have people still working when they thought they're going to be retiring then, right? We all know people, we all are related to people that are in those situations, unfortunately. So equity is the least reliable, least predictable thing that we can deal with. Over that same period of time, this blue line is the rental. United States median rental prices. The most consistent thing that we've seen is rentals. They continue to go up in value. So that's where, if you're looking at long-term rentals, it is consistent, and it is, even in recessions, even in booms and busts, a consistent source of income. All right, so I'm going to do a quick example before we wrap up here and talk about a couple other things here. I want to do what's called a $100,000 cash flow pack. So let's say you want to set aside a period of time, whether it's 5 years, whether it's 10 years, to do nothing but buy cash flow properties, not to spend the money right now, but to do nothing but set up the goal of being financially free in a period of time. 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. I believe everyone can do it in about 5 years if they really worked on it, but it might take longer. So I think this is a 10-year plan. So in this example, we're going to talk about the 1% rule. We already talked about that. So if you buy a $120,000 property, it's going to rent for $1,200 a month. And you're going to buy one deal a year. If you buy a multifamily property, that's the one thing we're changing. It's 1.25% because multifamily has a higher cost of ownership. You got to cut the grass. Sometimes you're paying for some of the utilities. So you want it to be a higher rent return, if you switch over to multifamily. Taxes in this example, we're talking about 1% of purchase price. Property insurance, we're about 0.5% of purchase price to factor in per year. Down payment, we're doing 25% down with a 4.5% interest rate. Now that is high. I did this example probably 3 years ago, so it's high. I just don't want to change it. It's a lot of math to redo. And FICO score minimum of 680. Property management, 10%. Vacancy rate, 5%. Now, when I talk about vacancy rate, that will vary widely based on area and based on you as a landlord, whether you're managing yourself or you're hiring a property manager. Whether your property is the most beautiful property on the block or the worst property on the block. Like, if you're in a high vacancy area, but you have the best property on the block, you will have low vacancy. If you're in a great area and you have the worst property, you will have high vacancy. So it really will depend on you as the owner and the condition of your property comparative to everything else there. And then we're going to set aside, in this example, at least 5% for repairs. Once again, that will vary based on how nice the property is when you buy it. If you buy a 100-year-old property that has never been updated, that's not going to be enough. If you bought a brand new construction, you might not need that, right? So that will vary, but we're just going to use generic examples just so we can go through these numbers pretty quickly. And then you will reinvest the cash flow in this example every single year until you're out of the rat race, what we call it, until you're financially free. So you're not making a profit and spending that, you are reinvesting that every single year so you can compound the effect of owning these properties. And we're not actually going to factor in rent increase, although you can increase rent, and we're never going to factor in property appreciation because we don't know if that's going to happen. It has been happening and it probably will continue to happen, but we're not going to count on that and make sure that it's still a good investment even without that as well. So year one in this example, you are buying a $120,000 property. Might be in Brunswick, might be in Winchester, it's not in Ashburn, right, where they don't exist. It's not in Fairfax, it probably doesn't exist, but it's probably an outskirts area, or who knows, Ohio, doesn't matter, right, somewhere. 25% down, so it's $30,000. So this example is saying, can you set aside $30,000 a year for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, and buy a property, right? And whether you are reducing your debt of living, whether you're reducing your housing expenses, or you're just going to do a side hustle and earn and save another $30,000 a year. So that's what this example is talking about. So this $30,000 or less a year, and then every single year, the positive cash flow, you're going to throw it on top of that. So $30,000 in this example. It's $1,200 rent, minus your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, all your property management, vacancy rate, repair costs, all that comes out to, basically, you're only bringing in, on the small property, just under $400 a month, which is just under $5,000 a year, and it's about a 15% cash-on-cash return. But this number in green is basically after you pay all your expenses, all your bills, all your reserves, that's your profit. Right, so we have that. So the goal is to not to spend that and add that to the $30,000 next year. So next year you have roughly $35,000, right? Same amount of money that you're earning and spending in year two, but now you have a little bit more. So you throw that into your down payment in year two, you're buying a bigger property, all the same numbers we talked about, and at the end of year two, you have roughly $10,000 of passive income. And so you're trying to figure out how long can you snowball this for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever you can do, depending on your discipline. And so this is year 10 by just doing that. All we're doing is taking that profit from the year before, adding it to $30,000 the next year, and just repeating that. If you did that for 10 years, you would basically, at the end of 10 years, have $125,000 of passive income. That's if you've never raised rent ever. Right, so you're meeting your $100,000 goal. You'll own about $2 million of real estate. You invested almost $300,000 during that time period. That's no small feat. It took you 10 years to do that. However, over that exact same period of time, you already got back $570,000 of cash flow. So you got a 190% return in that period. This does not factor in depreciation. This does not factor in appreciation or rent increases or anything. This is pure cash flow. Simple math on that. And does not factor in equity pay down as well. So it is simple. It's not as simple as buying Bitcoin and waiting. It's not as simple as buying something in the stock market. It's very, very simple, right? But the reality is the returns we get on this. And we have equity, we have $2 million in real estate here, but we're talking about if we never need to sell this property, you have $125,000 a year for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life. And if and when you pay off those mortgages down the road, that becomes higher because now you don't have that extra expense of the mortgages, right? So the passive income, if done correctly, now one of those things to do it correctly, to scale to the level that most people need to, is not managed by yourself, because that's tough, right? You know, some people are great at that, but the reality is hiring the right property manager and making sure the numbers make sense there. Any questions on this concept right here? So not theory, I've done this, I've helped many, many people do this. It is actually much more simple than you think, because the reality is you learn it all and then you buy one property a year, and then you save up for the next year and you buy the next property, and save up for the next year, and then before you know it, you have multi-millions of dollars of equity in your properties, and all you were doing is $30,000 a year or $20,000 a year, or whatever it is, whatever your dollar amount is, you can figure out what that is to get to that next level there. So it's simple enough, and if and when you guys want to start looking at that, Lenny is in the process as well. He can definitely help you as well. All right, from the investment side, there are 3 key players for every real estate investor. Now, it might be the same person. This might be you, all 3, but there are 3 key positions. So you're figuring out which position are you playing depending on what you want to do with the investment. So the locator, someone finding the deal, that might be a real estate agent, that might be the wholesaler, that might be you just finding the property. Without finding the property, there is no deal. And then you have the developer, someone that is actually managing the project, whether it's renovation, whether it's the analytics of the deal, whether it's putting the team together, whether it's just making sure that it's a good investment. And then extremely important is the money and the lender. How are we putting this together? Are you bringing the money to the table? Is Bank of America funding some of it? Is a seller funding some of it? So there's lots of ways to do this. But these 3 key pieces make up every investment project. And for many people, you are all 3 pieces, and that's completely fine. For some people starting out, they just want to be one piece, and they can kind of meet and partner or what's called JV with 1 or 2 other people to do an investment project together. We have many people that partner within our group, and they say, hey, let's just get together. I'll bring this, you do this, and you do this, and we all share this deal together. So those are the 3 key pieces there. I kind of created this chart a couple years ago because I start to see everyone's at a different point in their investor career. Some have been doing it for a while, some have not done anything and they just want to get into it. And so I created 2 paths to help us kind of visualize what the most typical evolution path is for real estate investors. So the first path is building an investment business, and they are investing their time. Maybe someone that doesn't have a lot of money to invest yet, but they want to actually get into the real estate investing space. They might actually start out finding deals, because it doesn't take you any money to do that, but it takes you time, right? So if you find deals, if you bring me a deal, there's a good chance that we might work together or you're going to make money, right? If it's a good deal. And so it's learning how to find that deal, and there's classes on how to do that. We teach those as well. There's many podcasts you can learn to do that. And then at some point, you're like, okay, that's a lot of work. I've made some money finding deals. Let me partner, on a deal, or let me actually take control of the deal. And so the JV structure, the most common JV structure and the value of each of those partnerships, 25% for finding the deal, 25% for funding the deal, and 50% for managing and operating the deal. That's not set in stone anywhere. It's just a common structure across the board. And then developer, eventually you say, I'm going to flip a property, or I'm going to buy the property, and I'm going to manage it and rent it out and refinance it, or whatever the case may be. And at some point, you become straight cash flow. You want to get passive. You want to offload the responsibilities, and maybe you become a lender, private money lender, and you are the money for someone else doing the work. And so that's kind of evolution of someone on that side. And then on this one is you have money, but you have a full-time job and no time whatsoever. And so on this side, you might start out on the lending side. You might say, I don't have time to go find a deal or manage a deal, but I have some money. I'm going to put a little money in the deal, and if I partner with a trusted investor, then I can be part 25% or 50% or something along those lines in terms of a deal there. And then at some point, you figure out a JV structure, you start owning your own cash flow properties after you have a comfort level there. And then many times you get into multifamily, where there's small multifamily or commercial. Most people, their goal is eventually to get as passive as possible. And the cash flow, the private money lending, and the multifamily is just a little bit more passive, less hands-on than the actual fix and flip, the wholesaling, and the residential rentals there. So those are the evolutions. Any questions on this path here? There's many other paths you can take, but these are the two most common paths when people come to us that I see on the investing side there. So that's kind of the introduction I wanted to cover on the real estate side. We do syndications, we teach on commercial, we teach on fix and flip. We have a whole class on how to analyze renovations and things like that. So if and when you guys want to look at growing wealth through one of those aspects, there's no right or wrong in real estate. It's what do you want to do, what are you passionate about, and hopefully we can help you. Lenny can definitely help you with that as well. So a couple things. This is a summarized version, we do about 2-hour classes, and we have a session, a series of 4 classes, basically 8 hours total. That everything that we think everyone should know about real estate investing, and we do it about every month, every month and a half or so. So if you want to sign up to get onto the VIP list for that full class, you can take a picture of that or email Lenny, he'll get you onto that list as well. That's the website right there. And I wrote a book. I've been talking about this book for a couple years. It's everything that through my years as a real estate investor that I've learned. I decided to put into a book and some experiences there, and I want to give it away for free to a lot of people. So if you've ever attended one of my classes, you can get a free book. You can scan that QR code, go there, and once it comes out, probably in about a month or two, I will give you a free book with the caveat that you got to read it and give me a review, and because I'm looking to do a second book after that as well. So that's my first book. I'm excited about that. And that's it. That's our real estate introduction class for today. Thank you very much, everybody. Record time for us.
Thank you, Omni.
And we still have some drinks and some food. Thank you very much, Lenny, for setting this up.
Did everyone learn something?
Yeah.
I just need to get to the 30,000 first.
Well, it's easier than you think. So what's the obstacle of getting to 30? So this is the easiest way by far. Figuring out how to get rid of your housing expenses. Like most people spend roughly $30,000 a year on their housing expenses. Or maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. So if you can get your housing expenses down, and you can go live with your parents, live with your grandkids, or what's called house hacking. So have you guys heard this term, house hacking? So it's finding a property that you live in that has income as well. And that income is offsetting. So it might be buying a duplex, living in one side and having the tenant pay for yourself. Almost any duplex, if you do it by it correctly, you will live for free. Now you might not want to live in a duplex forever, but if you live in the duplex for 3 years or 5 years, you're living free. And the key is, all the money that you were spending on housing, continue to put that into a savings account for nothing but that down payment. And so figuring out how to reduce your expenses down to as close to zero as possible is the easiest way to do that. And we have a bunch of clients that we work with that's the exact process that they take, is figure out how to house hack, or live under a bridge, or live with their parents, and then put all their money that they were spending into that. Any other questions? Good to go?
Good.
Thanks, guys, for being a part of Lenny's first group session, and you guys are all famous now because he's going to be posting this video.
I was going to ask one question.
Yes.
So you do look at the real estate taxes in a given area before
Correct.
we decide if we go in
Correct.
or not? Okay.
So given area, given property, so we use generic 1%, right?
Yeah.
Some areas it's less than that, some areas it's more than that.
Even Hagerstown is about sometimes 2%.
Yep, absolutely. If you're in the city, right? If you're in the city versus out of the city,
Right.
you got double taxes in many cases. So we absolutely look at those on a specific level, but just for generic apples to apples across the board, 1% is typically high in most areas. Many areas are like 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1.1 or something like that. And then you analyze the deal. And if you're at 1.3 or 2%, you just got to make sure that your rental deal is much better.
Right.
Ultimately, you're looking for a specific return.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yes, Lenny.
should you manage all of your properties by yourself, or should you?
I don't want to point anyone out here. So the reality is,
No.
I have managed properties
Lawyers
before, but the reality is, no, it is impossible to get to the financial free level through real estate with that, because you will just hate it at some point. You'll have a headache. I've done it before. The reality is,
I'm doing it right
you're
now.
done,
I'm done with
an
it.
attorney, right? The reality is,
And if we can't do it,
the reality is, we all have a mental, because it's so easy, like, oh, okay, that's like a few $100 a month I'm saving, and it's not much, because it just gives me, it's easy, but it's not. It is emotional pain. Every time you buy another property, you actually think, oh, I don't know if I want to buy another property, because this might mean another call that I don't want to take. And the reality is, if you have a property manager and a good team, a good property manager, you never get those calls, they take care of that, and they send you the checks, and you check in with your property manager once a week or once a month, whatever you have set up, it becomes much easier. It's impossible to scale probably past 5 to 10 and have a very successful portfolio if you're managing yourself, meaning like 1% vacancy or less. The reality is you can have hundreds, thousands of properties if you have really good property managers at very low vacancies, because they are doing that full time, and we're not doing it full time. So yes, do
It's
not.
not very passive if you're.
It's not.
If you don't work.
Well, and once again, so it is, you give yourself a job. That's what it is. You become a property manager, you give yourself a job, and that's okay. That's a job out there, right? So it's not really the investment. You have a job. However, that is the worst job in the world. Like, I wouldn't want it for anyone. It is the worst job in the world, and it's thankless. I love my property managers because they do the work that I don't want to do. And here's what I typically see with most mom and pop landlords that manage it themselves. Let's say they've been doing it for 10, 15 years. They have not been able to keep their rents at market value, because they're like, I don't even want to find a new tenant, so I'm not even going to rock the boat. I'm not even going to tell them about increasing rents over the years. And so they're thinking they're saving 8, 10% by managing it themselves. The reality is, almost every property I buy is from a struggling landlord, and they're like under renting by 20%. So they're saving money, but they're not even benefiting from that. Their tenants are benefiting from it. Like, the fact that they are managing it themselves means that their tenants are getting a discount, and their tenants are probably taking advantage of them. They're not paying the rent because they know you're not full-time as a property manager. They know that you might not have a legal team to back it up. And I'm a pushover. If my tenant says, I've got issues, I can't pay my rent, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, that's what I would say. Okay, well, hopefully next month. Like, I'm a softie. But my property managers, they're not, right? It's like, well, you gotta pay your rent. Here's the issue. Here's what we signed. And we'll work with them, but they're not taking advantage, right? Go figure out, go hustle. Go drive Uber if you need to pay rent. That's a responsibility, right?
I do have a follow-up question
Yes.
for anyone that might be watching. Where would be the best place to find, I guess, a reputable property management company or property manager?
Yeah, probably the hardest thing about real estate investing on the rental side is putting together a good team. And it's gonna be trial and error. You're not gonna, so when you buy rental properties, if it's managed by a professional property manager, the easiest thing is to try them out, right? So it's already, you're buying them, you're gonna work with them, and see if it makes sense. And if not, then you gotta start interviewing. And just like any other contractor out there, there's Angie's List, there's Craigslist, there's Google reviews, there's all those things. Ultimately, you gotta talk to them, you gotta set up the right expectations with them, and see if it's gonna be a good fit. So in every area, there are good property managers, there are terrible property managers, but you find the right one, then you invest around them, and they help you grow your portfolio. And in the long run, your property managers will be your biggest asset in finding new properties.
How so?
Secret, yeah, this is like the golden nugget right here. So I used to spread my property I used to spread the wealth, right? I buy a property, I just leave it with that property manager, and I got a ton of different properties in an area with different property managers. And I just thought that was fine. But what I found was I was never the most important person to my property manager. If I had 2 or 3 properties with them, because they had clients with 10 properties, 20 properties, 30 properties. So once I realized, if I became their most important client, they would take care of me first, like all my properties became a priority, but also, if they're making a lot of money off of my properties and they see that I'm a good landlord, I take care of my properties, I do their suggestions, they will want me to have more properties under their watch. So all their other mediocre landlords that are just tired, that don't want to spend any money on their property, they make their recommendations, hey, you should do this, the landlord says, I don't want to do that, right? They hate those landlords. When they're ready to sell, they come and tell me first. Because they know if I buy the property, I'll fix it up and I will let them manage it. If it sells to anyone else, they probably will lose a client. So I buy a ton of properties that my property managers already manage in their area, portfolio. So that only happens with you finding the right property managers, treating them well, and you're gonna find amazing deals, off-market deals. Anything else? Go for it.
No, I like that. Golden nugget. Yeah.
Golden nugget, that's.
Just don't talk to my property manager. That's the only thing right there, not that.
Number one client.
Yeah, I know.
Number two.
All right, good to go? Thanks, guys.
That's a lot.
Thank you.